Early one clear morning, the Navy SEAL training range was busy with energy and noise. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden light over the rows of firing stations. Young men and women, strong and focused, were getting ready. For another tough day of training? Their faces showed excitement, mixed with nervousness. These recruits had worked hard to get here, and today was another important day in their journey to become elite SEALs. The air smelled of gunpowder and fresh earth. The sound of distant whistles and commands filled the space. Among the group of young, well-equipped recruits, there was one person who looked very different. He was an older man, walking slowly, but with a calm and steady step. His clothes were simple, and plain nothing like the high-tech gear the recruits wore. He carried a worn duffel bag over his shoulder, and a leather holster that looked old but well cared for. His face showed lines of age and experience, and his eyes had a peaceful, confident look. The young recruits noticed him right away. Some of them whispered to each other, curious about who this old man was and why he was here. "He looks like he belongs in a different time," one recruit said, quietly. Another laughed softly. "Maybe he's just here to watch. No way he can keep up with us." They thought he might be a visitor or some kind of civilian observer who was allowed to watch the training. No one imagined he would actually take part. Instructors who stood nearby barely glanced at the old man. They were busy checking the equipment and giving instructions to the recruits. The old man quietly made his way to the back of the line, setting down his bag carefully. He didn't say much. Instead, he observed everything with calm interest. The recruits kept stealing looks at him, some with amusement, some with doubt. Why would someone his age want to be here, in the middle of such hard training? The old man did not try to explain himself. He just waited patiently for his turn. His hands moved slowly as he took out his pistol, an older model that looked simple compared to the high-tech weapons around him. The recruits noticed this too and chuckled among themselves. "That pistol looks ancient," one said. "Bet it! Can't even hit the target." The day's training started with the usual drills. Recruits were lining up to practice their shooting. They'd learned how to handle different weapons, how to aim quickly, and how to keep calm under pressure. The instructors gave commands, and the recruits followed, their guns firing sharp sounds into the air. When it was finally the old man's turn, he moved slowly, but with purpose. He set up his station with careful attention, taking his time to get everything just right. The recruits whispered again. "He's so slow. It's going to mess up the whole drill," said one young recruit. Another added, "Look at him, taking forever just to adjust his sights." What a joke. The drill instructor noticed the laughter and quiet mocking. His face became serious. "Silence," he barked loudly. The recruits quickly stopped talking and focused on the drill. They knew the instructor did not tolerate disrespect, but inside, many were still doubtful about the old man. The old man took a deep breath and raised his pistol. He stood very still, his eyes locked on the target. Range was quiet, except for the sharp sound of his first shot. The bullet hit the target dead center. The recruits blinked in surprise. They expected a miss, maybe even a wild shot. This was perfect. The old man fired again and again, each shot landing exactly where he aimed. The group of young recruits began to whisper in disbelief. "How is this possible?" one said. Another whispered, "Is he cheating? This can't be real." The shots continued, steady and precise. Every single one splitting the bullseye. A young recruit, feeling challenged, stepped forward. "This is just beginner's luck," he said loudly, trying to hide his amazement. He raised his own pistol and took aim. He fired several shots, but none matched the perfect accuracy of the old man. The difference was clear, and the recruits could no longer hide their respect. Still, no one knew who the old man was. He never spoke much during the drill, just continued shooting with calm focus and complete control. His skill was something the young recruits had never seen before. It was as if years of practice and experience were guiding his hand. After the drill ended, the instructor walked over to the group. "Gentlemen," he said, "that was Mr. Carlos Chuck Norris, 8-time world pistol champion." A wave of shock went through the group. Some recruits gasped quietly. Others looked at each other in disbelief. Then the old man removed his cap and smiled. The unmistakable face of Chuck Norris was revealed. The recruits, who had mocked him just moments before, were now filled with respect and awe. They realized they had been wrong to judge someone by his age or appearance. Chuck Norris nodded kindly at the group and shared a simple but powerful lesson. Respect every shooter, no matter how they look. Skill comes from dedication, not gear. That day at the range became a story the recruits would never forget. It was more than a lesson in shooting. It was a lesson in respect, humility, and the power of quiet confidence. The old man who walked slowly and carried simple gear had shown them all that true skill and strength come from within. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the young recruits looked at their own weapons and gear differently. They understood that being a SEAL was not just about speed, technology, or youth. It was about heart, practice, and respect for every person's journey. The old man packed up his gear and left the range quietly, just as he had come, but his presence left a deep mark on everyone there. The story of the day the SEAL recruits mocked an old man and then learned he was Chuck Norris would be told many times in the years ahead. After the old man had quietly taken his place at the firing line, the young SEAL recruits couldn't stop whispering and laughing among themselves. They saw his slow, careful movements and his simple, worn gear. It was so different from the high-tech equipment they were used to. They thought it was funny how seriously he seemed to take things, even though he looked like he didn't belong there. Some of the recruits made jokes under their breath. "Look at Grandpa over there," one said. "Bet he's got more stories about the good old days than about shooting straight." Another replied, "Yeah, he probably still uses a horse instead of a car." Their voices were low, but filled with teasing. They didn't mean to be mean, but they couldn't help making fun of the old man who seemed so out of place. One recruit even made a loud comment, "He'll probably fall asleep before his turn comes." Some recruits laughed loudly, enjoying the moment. But others felt a little unsure. They wondered if the old man was really just a visitor or if he was there to do something more. Nobody knew much about him, and that made the teasing feel a little risky. The instructors at the range noticed the whispers and laughter. They were strict and serious, and they didn't like the recruits making fun of anyone. One of the instructors stepped forward and shouted, "Quiet down! This is a place of respect and discipline." His voice was loud and firm, making everyone stop talking. The recruits quickly went silent, but they still looked at the old man with curious eyes. Despite the teasing, old man showed no sign of anger or frustration. He just smiled gently to himself, calm and focused, moved with quiet confidence, like someone who had done this many times before. He was patient, adjusting his pistol with care and checking his sights slowly. It was clear he was taking the task very seriously. As the shooting drill began, the recruits lined up and fired their shots. Some were nervous, some were confident, but all wanted to show they could hit the target well. They focused hard, trying to aim quickly and shoot accurately. The sound of gunfire echoed across the range. When it was finally the old man's turn, the young recruits watched closely. They expected him to be slow and clumsy, maybe even miss the target. But what they didn't expect was what happened next. The old man raised his pistol with steady hands. He took a deep breath and stood perfectly still. Then he fired the first shot. The bullet hit the bullseye right in the center. The recruits gasped in surprise. They'd not thought he could shoot so well. He fired again and again. Each shot landed perfectly in the center of the target. It was clear he had great skill and control. The young recruits whispered among themselves, amazed and confused. How could this old man who looked so slow and ordinary shoot so well? Many felt a mix of respect and disbelief. One brave recruit stepped forward. He wanted to prove it was just luck. It was beginner's luck, he said loudly. "Let me try." He picked up his pistol and aimed carefully. He fired several shots, but none were as accurate as the old man's. The difference was clear. The recruits began to realize they had misjudged the old man. Their laughter and teasing faded into silence. They started to pay close attention as he finished his shooting with calm focus. No one had ever seen such precise and steady shooting from someone who did not look like a young recruit. After the drill, the instructor walked over to the group and made an important announcement. "That man," he said, "is Carlos Chuck Norris. He is an 8-time world pistol champion." The recruits stared in shock. Chuck Norris was a name they all knew, a legend in martial arts and shooting. They couldn't believe they had been so wrong about him. Chuck Norris smiled kindly and nodded at the recruits. He spoke quietly but firmly. "Remember this lesson," he said. "Never judge someone by their age or appearance. True skill comes from dedication and practice, not from fancy gear or youth." The recruits listened carefully. They realized that the old man's quiet confidence and skill had taught them something much more important than shooting. They learned about respect, humility, and the value of experience in the days that followed. The story of Chuck Norris at the SEAL training range spread quickly. Recruits talked about how they had mocked an old man who turned out to be a true master. They shared the lesson they had learned about never underestimating someone based on how they look. Many of the recruits felt inspired to work harder and to treat everyone with more respect. They understood that becoming a SEAL was not just about strength or speed, but about heart, discipline, and respect for others. Chuck Norris's visit reminded them that greatness can come at any age. It showed them that true skill is built over time and that patience and practice are key to success. Even the instructors noticed a change in the recruits. They saw more teamwork, less teasing, and a deeper respect for each other. The lesson Chuck Norris gave them became a part of their training, shaping the way they grew as soldiers and as people. Chuck Norris left the range quietly, without fanfare, but his presence stayed with everyone. The recruits who had laughed at him before now admired him deeply. They knew they had been part of a special moment, a moment when they learned an unforgettable lesson about respect and skill. The story of the day. The SEAL recruits mocked an old man and then found out it was Chuck Norris would be told again and again. It would remind them all to look beyond appearances and to value dedication and heart. From that day on, the recruits carried Chuck Norris's words with them. They worked harder, treated each other better, and aimed higher. Not just in shooting, but in life. And every time they stepped onto the range, they remembered that quiet, skilled old man who taught them the true meaning of respect. After the old man, who was actually Chuck Norris, finished his perfect shooting at the range, the atmosphere around the SEAL recruits changed completely. What had started as quiet whispers and jokes turned into stunned silence and then into deep respect. The young men and women could hardly believe what they had just witnessed. They had come to the training range ready to prove themselves. But it was Chuck Norris who ended up teaching them a lesson they would never forget. The recruits gathered in small groups, talking quietly about the surprising skill the old man had. "Shone, did you see how steady his hand was?" one whispered. Another nodded. "And how calm he stayed under pressure? That was incredible." Everyone agreed that his shooting was the best they had ever seen. The old man, who had seemed so slow and ordinary before, had surprised them all with his precision and control. Some recruits who had made fun of him before now looked embarrassed. They remembered the jokes and laughter, and they felt a little ashamed. It was clear to them that judging someone by their age or appearance was wrong. Chuck Norris had proven that experience and dedication mattered more than looks or youth. One of the recruits, feeling a mix of curiosity and respect, approached Chuck Norris after the drill. "Sir," he said respectfully, "how did you get so good? How do you stay so calm and focused?" Chuck smiled and put a hand on the recruit's shoulder. "It's not about talent alone," he explained. "It's about years of practice, patience, and believing in yourself. When you work hard every day, your body and mind learn to stay steady no matter the pressure." The recruit listened carefully. He could see that Chuck wasn't just talking about shooting, but about life in general. It was a lesson in how to handle challenges, stay calm, and never give up. The other recruits nearby also paid close attention, realizing this was a chance to learn from a true master. Meanwhile, instructors who ran the training program watched with approval. They saw how Chuck's presence had changed the recruits. There was a new sense of respect in the air, not just for Chuck, but for each other as well. The teasing and mocking that had been there earlier were gone. Instead, the recruits were more focused, more serious, and more willing to learn. During a break, the instructors gathered the recruits and spoke about what had happened. "What you saw today," one instructor said, "is a reminder that respect is earned through action, not words. Never underestimate anyone based on how they look or how old they are. Skill comes from hard work and experience. The recruits nodded, feeling the weight of those words. They realized that being a SEAL was about more than physical strength or fancy equipment. It was about heart, character, and dedication. After the training day ended, some recruits stayed behind to talk with Chuck Norris. They asked him about his career, his training, and his philosophy. Chuck was kind and patient, sharing stories about his journey from a young martial artist to a world champion shooter. He spoke about the importance of discipline, respect, and never stopping learning. One recruit asked, "Do you ever get nervous before a big shoot?" Chuck laughed softly. "Of course," he said. "Even after all these years, I feel nervous. Sometimes. But I've learned how to use that nervous energy to stay sharp and focused. It's normal to feel that way. What matters is how you handle it." The recruits were inspired. They saw that even someone as skilled as Chuck Norris had to work hard to control his nerves and stay calm. It made them feel that they could do the same with practice. As the recruits prepared to leave the range, many of them thanked Chuck Norris for coming and for sharing his time and knowledge. They felt lucky to have met someone so skilled and humble. They knew this experience would stay with them throughout their careers and lives. Over the next few weeks, the story of Chuck Norris at the SEAL training range spread like wildfire. New recruits heard about it as soon as they arrived. They were told to remember the lesson about respect and skill. Instructors often reminded their trainees not to judge others too quickly, using the story as a powerful example. The recruits, who had laughed at Chuck Norris before, were now some of his biggest fans. They respected him not just for his shooting skill, but for his character and the way he treated everyone with kindness. They understood that being a true leader means showing respect and humility. In training, the recruits started to help each other more. They were less quick to judge and more open to learning from everyone, no matter their background or experience. The culture of the group began to change for the better. Chuck Norris's visit was more than just a day of shooting practice. It became a turning point for the SEAL recruits. They learned that skill is built over time, that patience is important, and that respect is something you give and earn. They realized that anyone, no matter their age, can be strong and capable. Some recruits started to think about their own futures differently. They understood that even when things seemed hard or when they felt judged, they could keep working, keep learning, and become better. Chuck's example showed them that it was never too late to improve or to show their true strength. The lessons from that day stayed with the recruits during tough moments in training. When they faced challenges or felt tired, they remembered the calm old man who had surprised them all. They thought about his steady hand and quiet confidence, and it gave them courage. The story also spread beyond the SEAL community. Other military groups and training centers heard about it. People admired how Chuck Norris had come to the range and taught a lesson in respect and skill just by being himself. Years later, many of the recruits who were there that day still remembered Chuck Norris's visit. They told new generations about the importance of not judging by appearances and about the power of dedication and humility. For those recruits, the day Chuck Norris quietly joined them at the range was not just a memory, it was a life lesson. That shaped who they became, both as soldiers and as people. They learned that true strength comes from inside, and that respect is one of the greatest marks of a true warrior. After the shooting drill ended and Chuck Norris had quietly lowered his pistol, the air around the SEAL recruits was full of surprise and curiosity. No one could stop talking about the skill they had just witnessed. The old man who had looked so calm and steady had fired every shot right into the bullseye. The recruits who had once mocked him now looked at him with new respect and even a little awe. They had been wrong to judge him by his age or simple gear. The instructor stepped forward and called the recruits' attention. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice calm but firm, "that man you just watched is Mr. Carlos Chuck Norris, 8-time world pistol champion. He has won many competitions and is one of the best marksmen alive." There was a pause, and the recruits exchanged shocked looks. The name Chuck Norris was well known to them, famous not only for his shooting, but also for his martial arts skills and many achievements. Chuck smiled and removed his cap, revealing his familiar face to everyone. The recruits gasped softly. Some looked amazed, others almost speechless. The mood had shifted completely. The teasing and laughter from earlier were gone. Now, the recruits understood why the old man had moved with such quiet confidence. He was a legend, the instructor continued. I want you all to take this as a lesson. Never judge a person by their age, their clothes, or their equipment. True skill and strength come from hard work, practice, and respect for the craft. He looked at the recruits, his eyes serious. You will carry this lesson with you, not just here on the range, but in all parts of your lives. Chuck Norris nodded and stepped forward. He spoke in a voice that was calm but full of meaning. I have been training for many years, he said. When I was your age, I was also learning and making mistakes. It is the dedication to keep going that matters. Age is only a number. Your spirit, your heart, and your commitment define your strength. He looked around at the young recruits, his gaze steady and kind. Respect yourself and respect others. Everyone has something to teach you, no matter how old they are or where they come from. Never let pride or judgment close your mind. The recruits listened closely. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the wisdom in Chuck's words. The lesson was clear and powerful. They realized that being a Navy SEAL was about more than physical ability or appearance. It was about respect, discipline, and the willingness to learn and grow. After the formal moment ended, many recruits approached Chuck Norris with questions and thanks. They wanted to know more about his training, his life, and how he had reached such a high level of skill. Chuck was patient and generous with his answers, sharing stories of his early days, the challenges he faced, and the importance of persistence. One recruit asked, Sir, how do you keep your focus during such intense moments? Chuck smiled and said, Focus comes from calmness. You are calm, your mind is clear. You learn to control your breathing and your thoughts. It takes practice, but it is the most important skill you can develop, another recruit said. Did you ever want to give up when things were hard? Chuck shook his head. Many times, he said honestly. But giving up never helps. You have to keep pushing, even when it's difficult. That is how you grow stronger. The recruits felt inspired by his honesty. They saw that even someone as skilled as Chuck Norris had faced struggles and doubts. It made his success feel real and possible for them too. As the day came to an end, the recruits felt changed. They had learned an unforgettable lesson from a man who had quietly walked into their lives and shown them what true skill and respect look like. They understood that strength is not just about being young or fast, but about patience, humility, and heart. Chuck Norris packed his gear and prepared to leave. Before he walked away, he gave one last piece of advice. Carry this lesson with you. Always treat others with respect. Keep practicing. Remember, your greatest strength lies within you. The recruits watched as Chuck Norris left the range. The story of his visit quickly spread beyond their group. Trainers and soldiers in other units heard about the day when the SEAL recruits had met a legend and learned a valuable lesson about respect and skill. For the recruits, the day was more than just a memory. It became a guiding moment in their training and their lives. They thought about it often, especially when faced with challenges or moments of doubt. The quiet, skilled old man who had surprised them all was more than a shooter. He was a teacher of life. His visit reminded them that the greatest lessons often come from the most unexpected places. Years later, many recruits would tell the story to others, hoping to pass on the wisdom they had gained. They spoke of humility, respect, and the power of dedication. Chuck Norris's visit to the SEAL training range was a moment that changed many lives. It taught that greatness is not just about talent, but about character and heart. And for those who were there, it was a reminder that respect, patience, and belief in yourself are the true marks of a warrior. Let me know if you want me to continue with part 5. After Chuck Norris left the CIL training range, the young recruits were left with a powerful memory that stayed with them every day. The story of the quiet, skilled old man who had surprised everyone became more than just a tale they carried it in their hearts as a lesson about respect, patience, and dedication. Life at the training camp went on, but nothing felt quite the same. The recruits saw themselves, each other, and their training in a new light. The days after Chuck's visit were filled with hard work. Recruits pushed themselves in every part of their training, remembering the calm way Chuck had handled his pistol. When the drills were tough or the instructors shouted commands, they thought of how patience and focus could help them succeed. They knew that becoming a CL was about more than just strength. It was about discipline and respect. Many recruits talked quietly about the lesson they had learned. "We were wrong to judge him," one said. "Age doesn't tell you what someone can do," another added. "It's not about fancy gear or fast moves. It's about how much you care and practice." These words were spoken not just about Chuck Norris, but about themselves and their fellow trainees. The instructors noticed the change too. They saw that the recruits were more supportive of each other, less quick to judge or make fun. It was more teamwork, more patience, and a deeper respect that helped everyone grow stronger together. The story of Chuck Norris's visit became a kind of legend at the camp, told again and again to remind new trainees of what really matters. Some recruits even started to think about their own futures differently. They understood that no matter how old they might become or how many challenges they faced, they could keep growing and improving. Chuck's example showed them that dedication and heart are what makes someone truly strong. Outside the training camp, word of Chuck Norris's visit spread to other military units and communities. People admired how he had quietly entered a tough training environment and taught a lesson that was about more than just shooting. His visit showed that respect and humility are as important as any skill. The story reached many, who were not in the military, young and old alike. It inspired people to think twice before judging others. It reminded them that everyone has value and strength, even if it isn't always easy to see at first. Years later, the recruits who had been there still told the story to new friends and fellow soldiers. They spoke of the day they met a legend, not just because of his fame, but because of the lessons he shared. The story was told with pride and gratitude, a reminder to always keep respect and dedication close in life. The lesson Chuck Norris taught stayed with many of them in difficult times. When training was hard, or when life outside the military was challenging, they remembered his calm strength. They thought about how he never gave up, and how he treated everyone with kindness. This helped them keep going, even when things felt impossible. For the SEAL recruits, Chuck Norris was more than a famous name. He was a symbol of what it means to be strong inside and out. His visit showed them that true skill is built through hard work, patience, and respect for others. The story of the day the SEAL recruits mocked an old man only to learn it was. Chuck Norris became a powerful reminder. Don't judge by appearances. Respect everyone, and never stop working to be your best. That lesson became a part of who they were, guiding them through their careers and their lives. It was a lesson in humility, strength, and the power of quiet confidence. And in the end, it was a lesson that no one who heard it would ever forget.